And our fourth story out front, the Benghazi dilemma. How the administration handled the aftermath of the deadly attacks on the U.S. consulate in Libya is dominating the headlines and Beltway politics.
Obama is being compared to President Nixon on this. How does he feel about that?
I can tell you that the people who make those kind of comparisons need to check their history because, what we have here with one issue in Benghazi is so clearly, as we're learning more and more, a political sideshow, a deliberate effort to politicize a tragedy.
Political sideshow or an Obama administration cover-up? Out front tonight, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California on the House Intelligence Committee. And thank you very much, Congressman. Always good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you.
So when we talk about this, the talking points did include, in their early stage, when the CIA handed them for edits, a fairly detailed description that mentioned the involvement of al-Qaeda, that said that there had been warnings of a possible terror attack in Benghazi. All of these were taken out. It is still unclear at this point by whom, whether in the State Department or in the White House or somewhere else. How can you defend the administration for such substantial edits to those talking points?
Well, the key thing on the talking points is the most fundamental error in them actually stayed in throughout the whole editing process, and that was the error that said that this began as a protest. And that error was solely an error of the intelligence agencies. They thought it began as a protest, and they got that wrong. There's never been any indication that the State Department or White House was responsible for that error. There were other changes made, basically, that watered down the talking points. I think there were a number of motivations there, some to protect classified sources, others, in an effort to fight over turf between state and CIA. But none of that indicates that there was some crime that's being covered up here. To compare this to Watergate, I think is just preposterous.
In one of the email exchanges about the talking points, so the State Department spokeswoman, Victoria Nuland, talks about some of these edits, and one of them in particular that she refers to in this email was the fact that all the repeated warnings about terror attacks in Benghazi were removed. And she justifies that by saying that they should be removed because, quote, that fact could be abused by members of Congress to beat up the State Department for not paying attention to warnings, so why would we feed that either? Congressman, obviously there are people, Democrats, who are saying the Republicans are on a witch hunt because of this, but when you read a sentence like that, that sure as heck sounds like the Democratic administration was playing politics with this last fall.
Well, I think what was happening here is that, you had two facilities, one that was a State Department diplomatic facility, one that was an agency facility. And so State Department, I think, felt, why is CIA trying to set this up like they were warning, they were doing everything right, when in fact the CIA facility was just as vulnerable as the diplomatic one. So I think that was a kind of early effort to say, let's not jump to conclusion about who is more at fault here or whose facilities were more at risk. Yes, when you take it out of a context like that, it certainly doesn't reflect positively on the State Department. But, putting some gloss on these talking points, hardly earth-shattering, hardly the stuff of Watergate or major scandal, part of what happens every day in the interagency process. I do think the talking points ultimately got watered down to a point where they weren't very useful. But again, hardly the stuff of great scandal.
But there is one point, though, that people who are frustrated make that I want to ask you about, and that is, let's just talk about the basic thing, removing al-Qaeda from this, which, of course, we now know, and we knew fairly soon afterwards that the CIA was aware of that in the immediate aftermath, and that was in the original talking points, as we now know. This administration and this president was running for re-election on a platform that included repeated references to al-Qaeda being on the run, Osama bin Laden being killed. A narrative that all of a sudden you have an attack and an American ambassador dead because of al-Qaeda really does go against that. And it does seem that the removal could lead some people to feel that that really was political. It goes against our narrative, so we're going to take it out. What do you think about that?
I understand that theory, and, I guess you can follow it logically. At the same time, the president talked about this being a terrorist attack. Even, the ambassador talked about extremists attacking the diplomatic facilities. So there wasn't any, hiding the fact that we were attacked, we had our people killed. And those, facts in terms of al-Qaeda's potential involvement and Ansar al-Sharia's potential involvement came out very quickly. So it's hard to claim, I think, that this was part of a political campaign orchestrated spin. I will say this, too. The fact that we were attacked in part by al-Qaeda on 9/11, I don't know that in the context of a campaign, when the country tends to rally around the commander-in-chief, that the theory really makes much sense, that somehow it was better for the administration to make it sound like it was a spontaneous protest against the U.S. After all, the administration was also saying it had made this outreach in the Muslim world. And the other side could easily claim that, well, their outreach obviously wasn't working because we were the subject of this, uprising and this attack. So I'm not sure, although the narrative is a coherent one, it really makes a lot of sense here.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much. We appreciate your taking your time, giving his side of the story.